over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome everyone here this evening. It's an early Happy New Year present from myself and, of course, Marcus and Simon. We're delighted to be able to have a chat with you in these sort of lockdown, semi-lockdown tiered conditions here about the project that really has kind of grown over the last few years. And the reason why this gives me a little tingle of pleasure to introduce is that for me, going back some sort of 30 years in diving, the kind of essence of what we all get involved in diving with is because there's a bit of a project, there's something that you can do with your diving, something that makes a difference to how you feel, something that sort of enlarges your skills, advances your hobby, and something which other people look at and go, oh, that's quite cool, I quite like a slice of that. And this project is one of those things that has snowballed slightly over the years. The project team has grown. It's all been very good-natured. There's some witty repartee and banter. There's a lot of diving skills. There's a lot of science. There's a lot of new techniques, and it's sprung off in interesting directions for everyone that's involved. So as the sort of operations manager of Vobster Quay, it's given me great pleasure to watch Simon and Marcus assemble their team over the last few years and really revisit that spirit of why we're diving and exciting small team project work, ironically, in an inland site where nothing exciting is supposed to ever happen. But what's happened here is a really cool thing, and it's very special. So with all of that, we are assembled here. We have our fireside libations for our fireside chat. I hope you all have a fireside libation to enjoy with us. Of course, if you're enjoying this on catch up in the middle of the night, feel absolutely free to have a fireside libation. There's no rules. And I think really what we'll begin with is getting sort of Marcus and Simon to fill in any gaps for people that don't know them about who they are and kind of how they ended up at the start of the project. So I think maybe we're going, it's always sensitive how to choose this, isn't it? But maybe age order. We'll allow Marcus to go first and talk about how he, why this appealed to him as a project.
Okay, so right, so how do we all start? So photogrammetry in general, I started as a after getting a message from Simon. Actually, Simon had been doing quite a lot of photogrammetry at Chepstow. And I posted on Facebook to say, oh, I'm off to Chepstow. And he says, oh, you couldn't do me a favour, could you? I said, oh, maybe. What's that? And he said, oh, would it be possible to take some pictures of, I think it was the Saracen, and go down to the Abbot and do the Abbot and then go back to the Saracen again? And so, okay, what's this for? And he kind of showed me a model and said, oh, okay, yeah, I'll give it a go. I was aiming to have a 70 odd meter dive that day, so I would have had lots of time at 12 meters, and what better thing to do on deco than to actually do something with purpose. So I said, yeah, sure, and I took lots of photos and sent them to Simon, and away we go from there. Really, it's all Simon's fault for me getting into photogrammetry in the first place. I'm not going to go too much into the actual nuts and bolts of what photogrammetry is. So I keep looking away because I keep accepting people to join the latecomers. But I'm not going to go too much into the nuts and bolts of photogrammetry itself. But I mean, the project itself kind of started with it was kind of an off the cuff remark that Tim said. I'd done some models of Vobster, and I'd just gone to Malta as well, and done a few wrecks out of Malta. And Tim said, wouldn't it be great? Like, just imagine doing the whole of the lake. And I just went, yeah, let's give it a go. Why not? What could we possibly have to lose? I mean, yeah, let's give it a go. It's always nice to have a challenge. So it kind of started from there. And being Simon was the person who got me into this mess in the first place, I said to Simon, I said, fancy having a little bit of a challenge and seeing how far we can actually push things. And what, 3-4 years later, here we are. talking to you all about it.
Very cool. Simon, how did you feel when the tables were turned and you were invited back?
Yes. Well, I never quite realised how far we could get it, and how far it's come, and in some respects, how much I've got out of it. I started photogrammetry back in 2015, and for that, Graham Knott's got a lot to answer for. He pointed at stuff that was being done and said, "Why aren't we doing this?" And I thought, "Yeah, okay, yeah, why aren't we?" And I took some 2009 data. Graham had said he'd always wanted a mosaic of a wreck. And in 2009, I spent 40 minutes shooting 400 pictures and then 5 days stitching the damn things together in Photoshop. And I never wanted to ever do that again. So, but then when we discovered photogrammetry, we realized that we could just set the thing running and create more mosaics and orthophotos. And then we could add scale and GPS referencing and all those good things. So it became it just became an easy thing to do. And I can remember quite clearly the day 2D photography for me died, when I took that 2009 data, reprocessed it in Metashape, and saw my first iron gun sitting on the seabed in 3D. And I thought, that's it. 2D photography is dead. This is the absolute way forward. And then it was just a question of getting things bigger, scaling things up, adding in multiple divers, like getting Marcus to shoot a bit that I'd missed in NDAX so that we could link things together and prove that could work. Different camera, different technique, different image format, it doesn't matter. We can still get all these things to join together into bigger and bigger and bigger lumps that kind of peaked for me in terms of physical size doing the Thistlegorm back in 2017. And then when we looked at the lake and thought, yeah, why don't we do it? And to think, yeah, why don't we do it? Where was it? 50 acres, Tim?
36.
36. Okay, so it's only like seven times bigger than the Thistlegorm. So what's the problem? The short answer is there are quite a few problems that we found on the way, and crucially, quite a few solutions. In the time since, I've actually gone from creating very simple and basic 3D models of what's there to be representative to now becoming a Metashape dealer in the UK for Agisoft, becoming the dealer for UIS as well in the UK for the underwater navigation system that we're now using, and actually running a business that teaches police photogrammetry for forensic collision investigation. So, traffic accidents and stuff like that. So it's been a part of that journey to push stuff and really, really push stuff, because the police, and particularly the courts, and anyone being convicted of this kind of dangerous driving, want the highest level of proof possible. So you need a level of accuracy that consistently deliver, and it pays into this project, because when you're dealing with very, very big subjects like a 36-acre lake, it only takes one image out at one end to be out by a few pixels, that by the time you get down the other, it's 2 meters out. And it's controlling that kind of distortion, that kind of maintaining that kind of accuracy that's become, certainly for me, the absolute driver in everything. So
excellent.
So that's where I've kind of ended up, and how it's been part of perhaps a much wider journey, but also quite an intrinsic one and a very useful one on the way.
For a moment there, I thought you were going to talk about people who've been convicted of photogrammetry, but that's not true. Otherwise, you'd be
guilty.
So, I think maybe it's time to sort of kick things off with the early models. So the plan is here to sort of step through the talk, start off with some early models, have a chat about how they came about, talk about how it expanded like some giant marshmallow man of a plan, and then where it leads on to in terms of accuracy and position fixing. So that's the vague agenda for tonight. We'll see how well that goes along the way. But perhaps if it's time for Marcus to spin up some of his early models, and we do have to bear in mind here that Simon has a sort of self-confessed boredom threshold. So we'll keep moving through it, keep him interested. And if anybody's got any questions that you'd like me to insert, particularly maybe exciting questions, I'll do my best. Just put them on the chat and I'll try and work them in so that we kind of make a bit more of a flow than just having the presentation and then stuff at the end. So Marcus, give us a flavour of the early Vobster photogrammetry.
Oh, early Vobster stuff. Well, bear with me. As I said, I actually started off at Chepstow, and yeah, this was the first model that I actually processed myself. Up until this point, I'd taken all of my photos and sent them to Simon to process, because I didn't think that I had the hardware to be able to process it. But turns out I did, and I mean, I was pleased to punch when this came out, and to see the things like the number plate there, and yeah, that was a very, very happy, proud moment. But then, yeah, I did pretty much every attraction in Chepstow, and I mean the pulling factor for Chepstow was its depth. I was a depth junkie for quite a while, until I ended up in Chambers quite a few times, and now I only go there if I have to. But yeah, I basically did everything in Chepstow, and we did kind of try to see how much of a model we could make there. But then ultimately, I started off at Vobster. So here is my first proper model of Vobster, which, as you can see, is the Marcus Sidley HS46, is it, I think?
146E.
Oh, 146, there you go. Back in the days when the nose cone was still around it before it got turfed off the edge down there. This was, this day I actually went diving with someone who'd literally just done their Mod 1, and she was wanting to get some hours up together, and I said, yeah, sure, I just want to swim around here, so if you're happy just to not go very far. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. So yeah, this was my first proper Vobster model. Cool. Looking back on it now, I see all the bits that I haven't deleted and really clean it up properly. But I mean, when I did this, I even went to the extent of sort of going under the wing to make sure you do get the full swim through effect. Which
now there's a really, really cool story here about what this model did for somebody, because we put this model on the Vobster website so we could get divers to orientate themselves. This is on a 12-meter shelf. It's very popular for trainee divers, very handy for diving instructors to sort of give people a clue about what kind of tour they were on. But someone else saw it, and the geezer that saw it was someone who had flown in it. And the job of this particular aircraft was actually to calibrate airports. So what you do is you fly in on a normal approach in this aircraft, and you receive data from their radio locator, like, you know, beacons, like remember Die Hard 2 where they took out the outer marker and everything went wrong. This thing is what calibrates the outer marker. So they flew in and they would compare their very accurate positioning with the airport and then give the certificate to the airport for sort of landing worthiness. And this geezer saw this, went, wow, that's really exciting, I've flown in that, and then came along to have a chat with us. So there you go. There's a wider interest thing done there straight away.
Well, I think it raises one of the primary reasons for doing this, particularly underwater. It allows non-divers to see what we see.
Yeah.
And as an editorial photographer, I would shoot 20 or 30 frames of a subject which I wanted to tell the story of where I was, and then I'd choose one or two, and from that the magazine or the newspaper would choose just one. But now I shoot thousands and let people choose their own perspective and their own view. It's a different approach, but it's a much better mindset for me.
It's a very lovely thing, and this is one of the iconic things that people really, really responded to. As we put each one of these on the website, people really sort of went, yeah, that means something to me, and they connected with things at Vobster like they hadn't really before. What's your favorite model, Simon, of this sort of early phase? What sticks out in your mind as being cool?
The early phase.
The early phase. The years before you went electric.
Yes. Let me just share my screen.
When you were drinking with Bob Dylan. Yeah,
probably the time I did the where are we? The let me share this. Should be seeing this. This is the section from down the pipework to the 432, and then into
Wizard Alley,
into the Wizard's Graveyard, or the Wizard's Channel, depending on or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, this was one of the early ones. I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking, the pipe's not right. I don't like that. It's missing its elbow. I want to go back and do that again. It's got some mess here. But overall, it's not bad. It's a merge of two sets of data. So as you can probably see, there's a slight color shift between the slope and the 432 and the Wizard's Graveyard.
And that
it's
kind
primarily
of one of the crucial things, doesn't it? Because this is all about merging two sets of data, which carries with it its own set of particular battles, because it isn't just a question of going like merge chunks align. You've got to do some fairly, well, as always, the better the data, the better the image. So as a sort of into the greater project of expanding all of this, tell us about how hard it is to stitch this together.
For me, it's actually, now that I've done a few, worked it out, it's pretty straightforward. It isn't something to overthink. The first thing is manage your images. Make sure that you've got some form of image management behind you that allows you to make sure that you can go back and find the 10 images or the 100 images or the 1,000 images from a given moment in time that you want. So you can go back and think, well, I shot this section on July the 30th, 2017, and I want to merge it with this lot that I shot 3 months later. And by having that information, like, well, it's the pipe and it's the 432 and I know the date, I can extract the 500 or so images for this, and then I can come in and think, well, okay, I called it the Wizard's Graveyard and I shot it 3 months later, so that's probably by September. Look in September's batch. Oh, there they are. There's the 500 images there, and then you can merge them. So you need to have a process behind it. Behind all this, there's so much more going on that is actually as dull as ditch water, and we refuse to talk about it too much, but it's the critical thing. Yeah. Is having that mindset and that image management, so you're not scrabbling around folders, hard drives, whatever. I've got a single.
Would you say you've got any personal qualities that you feel are an advantage to you?
Yeah, being into data management is an absolute plus here. In another life, I run another business as well, which is currently working on, let me say that the spare parts catalogue of a major asset, that the defence asset that the country's building, that's got 1.5 million parts in it, and the spares catalogue for that is the data architecture for that is my current day job, along with the police stuff. So okay. You need to have this organisational mind, I think. Well, you don't need it, but if you want to do the whole lake, then you need something behind it that gives you that.
Sure thing.
To put it bluntly, it's only retentive methodology that stops you wasting hours looking for 10 images.
I'm sure that should be an acronym, actually. We've got a really good question here before we move on to expanding this out, because there are many, many things at Vobster and we kind of need to stitch the whole thing together. There's a really cool question here from a chap called Marek about the photo equipment that you're using to capture the images for this. There's something else about megapixel sizes, which I'll let you do sort of afterwards. And then there's a question about, is this a 360 camera? Is it a DSLR? Or is it a GoPro style camera? So maybe a really quick sort of background nerd update on what you could achieve with each of those would help us understand what maybe our viewers can achieve with what they've got. I mean, I know that I've sort of championed the wave it around randomly GoPro approach, but of course that's not quite going to deliver what we've got here, although you can get good results.
Yeah, so I'll actually take the megapixel question as well, and the short answer is, if I had 42 megapixel camera, I'd want one that did 84. I want as many as I can get, possibly every single frame. The more megapixels, the more detail, the more chances you have of actually aligning the images and finding tie points and all those good things. So
does that make you a hoarder?
Yeah, it also gives you a problem with like backup and disk storage, and I've got, I think, 38 terabytes now of storage behind my monitor.
So later on about IT problems. So
all right, okay. So let's park that for now. But so in terms of kit, it's not a 360 camera. It's a DSLR, typical sort of underwater photography camera, full frame DSLR with 60mm fisheye. You need to still work close and get close to your subject, so so your light can actually illuminate it, and you can give it that pool of light effect that I like. You can work with a GoPro as well. You have to realize that the limitations to everything that we take into that lake and whatever we're scanning. Even if, like I say, if I had 42 megapixels, I'd see that as a compromise, because I know someone's working on a bigger camera somewhere, sensor somewhere. So GoPro will work. GoPro, you can extract reasonably good quality from it. You can still work and create objects, and you can still scale them, and you can still add value by putting in GPS referencing and all that. But if you want the, what I consider the more richer, sharper, high detail, really fine work, you do need I think I wouldn't go anywhere near anything without a DSLR.
And Marcus, what's your choice of weapon for this?
I think that Chase Jarvis once said the best camera is the one that you have with you, and I've only ever used the SLRs that I have. So I started using a 5D Mark III, now I use a 5D Mark IV. On this project though, I did not only use stills, I did also use some video from the 5D Mark IV. But I mean, that was only at 1080p, which is what 2 megapixels, 4 megapixels, tiny resolution. It worked as a kind of trial, but ultimately I'll go stills every time for this. As Simon said, you just get so much more resolution. The more data you get in there, the more the software has to work with, and ultimately you can always downscale later on. You can never upscale. So I'm also a believer, capture higher as much as you can, as much as your camera will do. But ultimately, as I said, the best camera is the one that you have with you.
Okie dokie. So with that in mind, in terms of the cameras that you have with you, we've seen a couple of early examples from Vobster. It's probably time to move on to a bit of the project, which in recent weeks in our chats, we've dubbed Operation Ringbeam, which really is the flowering of the overexcitement at stitching together a few things initially. Marcus, would you like to, could you introduce us to the monster that this became, and how, I think if we were all sat here talking about a restaurant meal, we'd probably be using the phrase, your eyes were bigger than your stomach.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. I think that actually, with regards to Operation Ringbeam, that was actually started kind of the second year that we were doing this. I think if we want to go chronologically, then the first year was all about stuff that was underwater. I had captured scans different objects. Simon had scanned different objects, and we actually met up on. I'm going to share my screen on this one because I personally think it's quite interesting. We kind of met up, and the thing that I wanted to do was, instead of recapturing absolutely everything, it was a case of capturing the links in between things. Now, let's turn a sparse cloud. So we met up on, what does that say, the 21st of December 2017. That was project day one. So this that you see here, we have our the kind of slipway up here that majority of divers enter and exit, or certainly exit the water from. We have the pit with the Astra in the bottom of it. We have the Jacqueline. We have the wheelhouse. We have the crushing works, and the 12-meter shelf over here, and the escort over here. So that was our very first day of the project. I mean, as I said, with regards to this, I didn't pay that much attention to scanning the actual objects because those had been scanned previously. The whole idea of this was to try and form the linking pieces so that we could try and get Agisoft to join those existing models together.
In terms of joining things together, obviously at this point we are doing this maybe on separate dives. We're doing it with sort of separate runs, as Simon's talked before. I think it's time to sort of bring Simon back in to give us just a little teaser of what's involved in trying to make these things be in the right place in relation to each other. So some insight from the position master.
Yeah, so trying to merge this lot. This lot kind of exposed a weakness, as I said earlier. If you're 1 or 2 pixels of alignment out at one end of the lake, by the time you get to the other end, you're a meter or 2, because you need this consistent and very accurate way of working if you're going to work over what is essentially a long, thin object. Photogrammetry has a problem as well, in that if you don't really maintain good overlap, just enough to align the cameras, but not really good enough overlap, and you don't have enough parallel runs overlapping X and Y, you can end up with a model that curves. And I've seen models that curve, and people have looked at them and gone, "Oh, that's amazing." And I'm thinking, yeah, but that's a steel ship on the seabed. Why isn't it cracked? You know, it's bent, and the steel hull would not have withstood the forces that are being imposed on it. You know, but you need to maintain this constant accuracy across the whole thing. The other thing you got to do is watch out for things that change and move. And we know, yeah, and all of you that have dived the lake, we know you move stuff. We know exactly when you move it, because if we find a tie point on one image and everything's hunky-dory, and then some muppets come along and move something, guess what? The tie point's moved, and then you start to introduce problems if you can find the tie point. So you've got a series of problems. You can't go out and scan it all in one day and have the lake to yourself, as much as we'd love to. It's not possible. So we're constantly finding that the real world around us changes, and it's more dynamic than you think. Even a lake like Vobster, I mean, they just when we thought we were getting somewhere with it, they dumped a helicopter in it. Oh geez,
Sorry.
Another 800 to 1,000 images to plus we've got to now realize a lump of lake bed that we could see is gone. We can't see it anymore. So you know, you've got this dynamicism, you've got these people moving stuff around, you've got accuracy issues, and basically it's starting to run into a bit of a problem.
I think we were feeling your pain there as the neighborhood watch.
Yeah.
Lobster junk.
Yeah.
So, okay.
We know who you are as well, because we can check the diving log sheets. No, I'm kidding. We don't know who you are.
There's nowhere to hide, is there?
Yeah, but when it came to I'm getting ahead of ourselves now, but when we came to putting the control points in the lake, we actually bolted them down because we didn't want them to ever move again. And we didn't want any bloody divers, to put it bluntly, stealing them because they were shiny. So, yeah.
I think that leads beautifully in to a few photos that I know Marcus has of them attempting to make control points for photogrammetry diver proof. And I'm sure there's a few smirks around the screens in living rooms across the globe now, as everyone says, "Ah ha ha, the poor fools, how did they imagine they were going to do that?" I think over to Marcus for the ring beam.
Yeah, so Operation Ring Beam. I'm actually going to start with this image here, which was an author mosaic that I did using my drone of the quarry. And you'll see there are lots of black lines around it. So after the first year, what we did was absolutely everything underwater. And then I had this stupid, really weird idea of, I'll tell you what, let's try and do above and below the water. How hard could it be?
Photogrammetry fag packet, even more work, isn't it?
Indeed. So I sent this across to the guys and said, right, I think we want to put some ground control points in here. Now, the purpose of the ground control points is it's something that you are that can be fixed, that you can then survey accurately, and their data can be put into Agisoft, the photogrammetry software. And then it can georeference the model, and it can scale the model from there and whatnot. So,
and when you go back to it, it hasn't moved.
Indeed.
Key thing. Not unless you've got a 17mm spanner.
So I kind of
an imperial one.
Author mosaic that we had, and basically I was looking for shallow areas. Now the thing with the crucial bit about these ground control points is that we had to be able to survey them using standard terrestrial survey equipment. So i.e. Using a RTK survey GPS. So it had to be shallow enough for that, but it had to be deep enough so that I could get my camera in its underwater housing over the top of it. And thirdly, it had to be shallow enough that we could get a drill bit long enough to be able to drill the rock without getting the drill wet. So I sent this author mosaic over to the guys and said, I think these areas would be pretty good. So Simon made up some stainless steel plates, put a hole in the middle of them, put a vinyl sticker on them, which was a ground control point sticker. And then he went, yes, over there.
Over there.
So it was a very cold January morning. It was Simon, myself, Phil Short, Max were all there for this, and I believe Howard was boat handling for us. So here is one of the, this is ground control point number 3, I believe. And it's one of the first ones we did. It was the first one that I was really in the water for. Unfortunately, I had a HDMI issue with my camera. This was the only photo I managed in water with my camera that day. It was quite disappointing. But ultimately, what we managed to get from there was these ground control points. So you'll kind of have to squint at these, I'm afraid. So this is, you can see the concrete next to slip. That was our first ground control point that went in there. We have one on the end of the confined water. This one was only cable tied on, so I doubt that one is still there. It's probably too shiny for someone to
won't have survived, will it? Yeah.
No. Our third one. This is where Vobster are current. I think they've probably covered this over now.
I think I have actually concreted over that one now. I'm terribly sorry.
It's a dynamic world, Tim. We have to accept it.
But we put 9 of these in altogether. And then ultimately we had Max here. He borrowed some RTK GPS survey equipment from work, and he gave us very accurate, I think down to 2 centimeter XYZ accuracy of these 9 ground control points that we put in.
I think there's a couple of points here, isn't there? Because there's one here which is all about, we seem to be talking about a chap called Max, some chap called Phil Short, whoever he is, and I believe Howard Angel is knocking around in the audience somewhere, who's involved in this as well. So there's sort of a question about team members you've got, and an important point here about the fact that we all have commercial diving tickets, but the first rule of commercial diving is, of course, not to go diving. And that all of this was managed to carry out from the surface. But I'd like to come back to how you pick your new team members, or whether they pick you. Maybe Simon could.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think nowadays we just go on the internet and say, we're doing something, can somebody come along? And then people volunteer. But I think in the early days, we needed, I think I recognised I didn't have all the skills to do this, and certainly Marcus didn't either. And we took a look at each other and go, well, we can't do it, who can? And you go through your list of mates and, oh, hang on a minute, Max. Yes, Max and I had actually shared some sonar data back in 2016. He'd sent me some stuff from Scarpa Flow kindly. And so I knew Max, and obviously you knew him too. So, well, Max is a surveyor. Well, great. Okay. Do you want to ask him? Yeah, go on then. And it was as simple as that, really. It just sort of almost organic growth. Where there's a gap and we think we can't do it or don't want to do it, then we ask for help.
Indeed. Yeah, Max is not just a surveyor, by the way. He's an underwater surveyor. He's a seabed surveyor. So he does a lot of stuff with not only terrestrial survey equipment, but multi-beam and inertial navigation systems and whatnot, and ROVs, and plays with big boys toys. So he was kind of perfect for this. And
he
he
also,
was available.
yeah, he was available, and he had some flash kit as well. And there's a sort of
that always helps.
there's a question coming up, which I think leads into something that you've got coming up next, Marcus, because there's maybe a couple more photos of people doing stuff with ground control points, but where we're heading is into a realm of some fairly heavy data. And there is a question from Al Locke. I know Red Bear CCI divers ask all the best questions about what kind of computing power is necessary. So I want to hold that thought while you show us a couple more ground control point things. And then maybe come back to Simon to go, what upgrades do we need to look at for a model that has grown from a thing into a monster?
Okay, so yeah, just finishing off the ground control points. So yeah, we had to access some of them by boat, which the issue that the staff there is having to hold it still. So Howard did try his hardest to make sure the boat was stationary, which is easier said than done, I think. I'm sure that Howard will agree that it was not an easy task whatsoever, especially being that the hull of the boat was pushing against the rock in different places, and then obviously bouncing back out. But yeah, I think that's all I have on the actual surface side of the ground control points. I'll hand over to Simon to talk about.
Yeah, before we go too far,
I can also actually used on this and how much I've spent on that, which is quite
okay.
Before we dip into that, just one final thing on the ground control points. Now I know what I know now. I wouldn't do it like that again. It's one of those learning things. The ground control points that we used are far too small for the drone, but far too big to put when you put a camera right over the top. So I don't quite know how I'd solve that one. But there is an optimum size for ground control points, and we didn't use them for either, but somehow it still worked okay. So yeah, sometimes you just have to break the rules. Processing. The short answer is you can work quite efficiently with very limited hardware if you need to. For a very long time, I did all of my processing on a laptop. Didn't have any desk-based hardware at all. And what you do is you find ways to work around the issue. So, you can start off with your big megapixel raw images. The first thing you do is downsize them, downsample it, so you're working with less data. The next thing you do is when you process it, you work with, low quality, not low quality, but low resolution stuff. And to be honest, when most people are looking at this stuff on the web, they can't tell whether it's 5 million faces or 50 million faces. And to be honest, nobody cares. They just want a nice shape to look at. So you're always going to be chasing the limits of the hardware. If somebody said, I can give you a massive rack of Dell servers with all the graphics cards you need, I'd still fill it. I'd still try and create reality in there with a 50 billion faces, because that's just the nature of the way we work. So at some point, though, you reach a physical point where you think, actually, the model I'm going to process now is bigger than what I can actually cope with, even at the low settings. So then you start to spend money on RAM and graphics cards and processors. Not necessarily in that order, but that's probably a good thing to start looking at. Graphics cards are an add-on you can include. They can start to add a lot of value in certain steps of the processing. CPU is another area to look at, and then finally probably RAM. There is a lovely script in Metashape that you can use in the professional version, which allows you to dice up a model. So this is what I did with the Thistlegorm, which had, even if its lowest, had I think 50, 60 million points in the sparse cloud. And what I did there was dice it up into a series, like a 3x5 sections. And from that, I could then process each section individually, but because they're georeferenced, they don't lose their physical position in 3D space. So when they come back into the model again, they're all in the right place. So when I was processing the Thistlegorm back in 2017, I was using the cloud, as well as the hardware in the office here, I was still reaching limits, and I'd still have to think, okay, hang on a minute, I've diced that into effectively 5 times 3, 15 sections. There's one there that's quite complex and it's quite difficult, so I'm going to slice it in half again and split it. And it actually helped, because then I could split the load of processing across 2 or more hard PCs, but also fit it inside the available hardware I had. So
You've accomplished the most beautiful segue there between what you're talking about and a question that Mark has asked on the chat about, have you tried cloud computing? I answered this moments later.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Now, I think that's testament to the weeks and weeks that we've spent planning and scripting this actual event.
Well, you mean like for about 4 minutes this afternoon or whenever it was? Yes, last night. Yeah,
yesterday, I think.
Yes.
But I'm going to come back to a point where you're suddenly, as a friend, I was concerned for you for a moment there, because you suddenly started talking about having to go for lots of extra computing, lots of extra RAM, graphics cards, hard disk drives, racks of all the rest of it. And I suddenly had a vision of the television last night and a gambling advert that said, when the fun stops, stop.
Stop. Yeah.
Now, obviously, this has started out as a bit of a hobby thing, which was fun. And it's suddenly grown into another thing, which is suddenly starting to consume resources. And just before we head off to Marcus to find out all about whether Operation Ringbeam delivered a ring beam or not, how is your fun tolerance doing at this point?
The fun has not stopped.
Brilliant. Keep going.
There is a very old saying that I deeply subscribe to, is that if you find a job you love, you never really work again. I'm at that age and at that point in my life where I realize I'm never going to have enough money to retire. I will work until I die. So why would I do anything I've got no interest in doing? I will work until I die doing things I enjoy. And this, for me, as I said in the intro, has grown from a bit of a sort of, well, that's rather fun, and that's rather, oh, wow, that's amazing, to, well, actually, it's now a business. Or 2 businesses, because Deep 3D does its own thing as well.
So you ended up doing this, and now you're going to work until you die, because
doing this. Yeah, so we'll never finish the lake, because I'll be dying doing the lake because somebody in there will change it. Yeah.
Okay, Marcus, what's your most fun moment been up until Operation Ringbeam?
To be honest with you, it was all it was like the start of a new relationship. It was all fun and enjoyable at the very beginning, and and then obviously time goes on, and you end up spending more money, and yes, no, I've enjoyed every single dive that I've done on this project. I think that the hardest.
I haven't. I've got some I've not enjoyed, but anyway, carry on.
Well, as I said, I've enjoyed every dive.
Yeah.
The processing has certainly caused a lot of hair loss. Although that is kind of about the time that my daughter was born, so I'm not sure whether it was that caused my hair loss or whether it was.
Sometimes it's wise to come into these projects with a pre-lost hair.
Yes. Go in slick. You got nothing to lose.
And speaking of going in slick, how did Operation Ringbeam turn out?
So Operation Ringbeam, it turned out very well. So once we had installed these ground control points and we had surveyed them, we then Howard and I went for a dive. This is one of Howard's images, and there I am scanning for Operation Ringbeam. So this day we did 2 laps at around about 4 meters, and it was beautiful. It was January, cold but lovely visibility, and here I am going from 4 meters up towards the surface, and you can actually see one of the ground control points up here. Now, something to note here is that that's not actually the ground control point. That is a reflection of the ground control point on the surface of the water. The ground control point is actually in here. So actually, going along at 4 meters, it was really easy to see exactly where they were on this day, because they were nice and clean and shiny and brand new. And I kind of knew approximately where they were, but ultimately I could just see them reflecting off the surface of the water. And so I knew where to stop and ascend, go up to it, and then I obviously go back down and carry on. So I'm going to swap.
I think while you're swapping, I'm just going to dip in, and there is one consistently unthanked element and aspect to this whole project. They have been overlooked time and time again. They are the unsung heroes. The one thing that's made this project get easier rather than harder is the zebra mussels are filtering the crap out of the lake on a, as we speak, and the visibility has been consistently held to be better until they have their sex fest and whenever it is, I don't know, early springtime. And
Chowder, I think.
Mr. So praise be the zebra mussels.
Yeah,
if you've ever dived the Great Lakes, you'll know exactly what we're talking about there.
Mackie's on at the moment. She can tell you all about the Great Lakes.
That does lure me into another question, because Marcus mentioned it just now. Peak photogrammetry season is, of course, the winter. In the UK, only a fool would choose to be doing photogrammetry in a lake instead of going out diving in the sea. So it does seem that, I mean, we know you can get 20 meters visibility in Vobster in the winter. We know you can do photogrammetry in like less than 1 meter if you're really on it and stuff. But that is when most of the diving's occurred. So let's go back to the human angle for a bit and talk about quite what kind of personal upgrade you had to do to devote your winter diving to this. Because this isn't some hop in the water because it's a nice summer's day kind of a project. This is a at least semi-grueling kind of event, particularly if you insist on diving open circuit. So maybe Simon, what's the physical cost to you?
Physical cost in terms of getting in the water here, practically nothing, because I dive open circuit still. It's not particularly an expensive way to get wet once you've got the kit, obviously. My camera gear is now getting on for 10 years old, and it still delivers everything I want it to, apart from the more megapixels that I crave. But I'll be damned if I'm going to bung 10 grand at getting just a few more megapixels right now.
It'd be fun though.
Yeah, it would be fun. Remember that I also see this, and I've always seen the trouble I have separating out at many levels is cost benefit value and return on investment calculations that go on in my business head as much as my fun head. It starts off as fun, then you start to see there's an end point, and yes, does this investment start to actually pay off? So I hate to say it, I'll only invest in stuff when I can see a return on it, even though it's fun. It's almost impossible to separate out the hobby from the commercial aspect. Even though we're doing this as a hobby, it's not commercial at all. No one's paying us. We're doing it for the love. We're doing it to advance things. We're doing it to challenge ourselves. We're doing it for all the right reasons, just to give ourselves something to do and stop getting bored, perhaps. I don't know. But the point is, for me, I do look, and I know you have desperately wanted to get me into a red bear, Tim, and I know you're leading this question into that. But again, for me, right now, adopting a rebreather would be a massive jump and a massive step, and I need to be conscious of that mindset that I currently have for open circuit, where I can get in and I can shoot 3,000 frames and I know what I'm functioning and doing and working. And the thing on my back is not the mistress that's going to kill me if I do not, pay it the attention I need to. So, yeah. Does that answer the question? It's rambled a bit, so I do apologise, but I think you get the idea. Yeah,
it sets me up for the challenge. Marcus, what are you packing around you that helps you withstand sort of 3 to 4 hours of diving in 4 degrees sea water during January for your hobby?
Quite a lot of blubber. until this year, actually, when I lost most of it. No, to be honest with you, my kits, my dry suit, my own suits haven't really changed from tech diving side of it. I mean, ultimately, it's the same sort of run times that I'll be doing if I was doing a 60, 70-minute dive. So it's all the same stuff. So during the winter, I'll wear probably a 400-gram heated undersuit or 200-gram heated undersuit. Dry gloves. During the summer, I might go to wet gloves. I might go to not have any heating at all. But ultimately, it's all. I haven't had to upgrade any of my undergarments to for thermal protection at all.
Cool.
It's all kind of
I think I will just dip back in, if I may,
Yes.
because there are supporters of this project beyond the zebra mussels. People out there have been very generous with their time and their equipment. Brett Thorpe at Dive Life been very supportive, lending scooters and kit and stuff like that. Perty at UIS as well has been very, very supportive of the project, and it's those kind of things that allow us to make either a small incremental improvement, or in certain cases a leap forward that we could never have dreamed of or imagined when we started it, such as the underwater GPS positioning that we'll talk about later.
Okay, well, I think having set the scene by talking about what we're trying to achieve, what we're doing to achieve it, how we're going to actually deliver the dives, it's probably time for Marcus to give us a little bit of a view of what happened when we stitched it all together. So if Marcus gives us a thing, and then Simon, there's been a question earlier on about how we come back to scaling and stitching it together. Perhaps we can have that as part 2 to this, the great reveal.
By all means. So yeah, drum roll if you want. This was Operation Rimbeam. This was without doubt the biggest achievement I felt on the project was, well, or rather, what I'm going to be leading on to with this. So this was at the one of the 4-meter laps that I did. This was the one that I made from stills. I did 1 lap with stills, 1 lap with video. The reason I did video for 1 lap was because ultimately you can have more frames, you can get less distance, more overlap in between the frames. I have to say that my video lap didn't turn out quite as well, but the one from stills, that was absolutely fantastic. I tried aligning both stills and video together, and then I tried each one of them separately, and the stills came out absolutely beautifully. So each one of these little flags here are ground control points that, or surveys points that we have put into the lake. So you'll see that there are some that are not within the water. So these, for instance, are ones on land that Max had done. Those were gave us something else that the drone footage could have a look at. So the same day, I then did a circuit of the lake with my drone. About probably 10 meters altitude, not very high. I can turn on my cameras there. You can see each one of those blue squares is a single photo, so you can see the track that I did. And then I went to align everything, and it just happened. This was a very, very excitable, proud moment that, although it doesn't look much, to actually have above water and underwater aligned like this was just absolutely fantastic. I mean, it just stuck together beautifully. Now, one of the things that I did
right now,
one of the things that I did find very interesting was actually so with the surface, the drone mounted one, not sure how much people know about georeferencing and GPS, but the GPS that is on my drone is L1 only, which means it's kind of a consumer bandwidth of GPS and GLONASS, and that accuracy could be plus or minus 6 meters maybe. As I said, Max had surveyed these points down to I think it's 2 centimeters, and when I turned off the georeferencing data for the photos that were from the drone's GPS units and turned on the data for these and lined up, the whole quarry shrank, as it's kind of went from this very inaccurate 6 meters accuracy per photo down to this 2 centimeter accuracy per ground control point. I literally saw the whole model shrink. It was that was quite amazing to see, because I mean everyone thinks, oh yeah, GPS is really accurate. You get your phone out, look, it knows exactly where in the high street I am. But actually, it's
not all GPS is equal.
Bit more than that, indeed.
At this point, we shine a giant SB on the sky for Simon Brown to enter the ring, tag Marcus out, and talk about georeferencing and accuracy one more time, because this is the white cat that he strokes as the Grand Master.
Yeah, this is the thing that really drives the ethos behind what I try and do. I want everything to be as accurate as I possibly can at any time, and I want people to look at the model and be able to measure things, arbitrary distances, anything you like. How far is it from the steam locomotive to the funnel on the physical? How far is it from the 432 that's in Vobster to the safety boat? All of these questions, somebody might want to ask them one day, and I want to make sure that when they run it through a model and they measure it, because they can do these kind of measurements, the accuracy is there to trust. And that it's easy to get a GPS signal. It's easy to get your phone to tell you roughly where you are, like Marcus said. But to get it to a point where you can use that data for reconstruction, so you're not using scale bars, you're not using physical tape measurements or anything like that, that's a leap up. And as Marcus indicated, to do it with a drone, you need what's called RTK, real-time kinematics. That's expensive. You can also do it. I've worked with a piece of development kit where you are measuring the position of the camera when you release the shutter and then post-processing it to within 2 centimeters. That offers so much. And one of the things that when I was tendering for the police work, I was hoping that they would see that and back it as a product, but they didn't. They didn't bite on that, unfortunately, because that would allow you to walk around on land shooting 500, 2,000 images, whatever you needed, and then post-processing them so that you reconstruct the whole model using just the position of the camera, because it's that good. And I've got some work that I've done, and I still use it from time to time, where it is sub-millimeter. When you put in your check bars, as we call them, it's sub-millimeter. It really is that good. So that's top side. It's difficult to do, or it's expensive to solve these problems. And this is a hobby. Remember, this is a project to do in our spare time, and we don't have a friend, as far as we know. If there's anyone on the call, please let us know, who has an RTK drone. So we have to find ways around it. And what we did was both Max and another guy called Tapsa actually surveyed the positions of the buoys in the lake. So we then had some fixed positions, or reasonably fixed positions, of where things were under that buoy. And with their survey kit, Tapsa's a professional surveyor, just like Max, their survey kit gives us more and more accuracy that we can then start to exploit and use in the model. It still doesn't get us under the boundary of the water. Radio waves just bounce off the surface of the water, that we cannot get a GPS signal underwater, but now you can.
Now that's an interesting point there, because you mentioned Tapsa.
Yeah.
Tapsa arrived as a result of one of the other kind of spin-offs of all of this excitement about photogrammetry at Vobster. and he is someone who came along to one of the early IENTD photogrammetry courses. Now, those photogrammetry courses had sprung out of two initiatives which happened in 2016 and 2017 up in Scapa Flow, aboard the MV Halton, and in conjunction with Claire Fitzsimmons, Newcastle University, and his name's just escaped me at the moment.
Bob.
Oh, Bob, but the Chris Rowland and
Harry.
Hitton, that's it. So both of those guys had contributed strongly to a thing. We developed a course here out of the week that they led so excellently. And Simon has been instrumental in developing the manual for that course. And for the first couple of courses that we ran, Marcus turned up with some amazing things to inspire everyone. Now, Tapsa joined the team, having come on that course, and then gone, oh, I'm quite interested. I'm a GPS surveyor. And then I joined.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he just kind of let that one slip casually around about lunchtime on the first day. So there's a lovely organic thing that's happened here where people have just sort of come with a hobby and a bit of some expertise and have then sort of been rolled into this snowball. But where the snowball went is really what the subject of many conversations around the Berghavan post-dive was. And the output from pulling together Operation Ringbeam, which really delineated the edge of the quarry in a very precise way, and then allowed everything to position in the middle, was something that Marcus sort of took on and popped out with a couple of demos. So perhaps if we sweep away the tablecloth, Marcus can show us what actually happened once Operation Ringbeam. And there was a chap earlier on making a terrible joke about that, which we thoroughly approve of.
I can't imagine what that might be.
Just think for a moment. But in the meantime, show us Vobster underwater all at once, please.
So this is first of all the results of Operation Ringbeam in a I'm not sure if this is probably a textured mesh. I would have thought. This is up on Sketchfab. I've gone into Sketchfab. It's just a lot quicker and easier to navigate. It's the models that I put up there are a lot smaller than the ones in Agisoft. So the ones in Agisoft do take a bit of, or rather don't orbit as nicely as this on my computers. So this is the Operation Ringbeam, and as I said, from there I pretty much added the old data into this. So here we are. You can see the original surface stuff. You can see the first 4 meters, and then just added the existing data. And I actually created this during that very first photogrammetry course. So while Tim and Simon were doing their teaching side of it, in between showing the students what I've been doing and with VR goggles and stuff like that, I was actually adding more and more images to create this model, which once again this one is up on Sketchfab. So I mean it's still not perfect. There's still not everything there. There's still bits missing, like for instance the jesters are missing from it over here. Sorry. The caravan's missing. The yacht poppy's missing. The drilling rig is missing. Those were bits that I really struggled. Or certainly the poppy and the caravan. I really struggled to try and align those, because down there it is absolutely featureless. It was just silt. There were some cave lines maybe going in between a couple of things, from the helicopter to Poppy to the caravan, but I mean realistic, that's really not enough for the photogrammetry to be able to pick up. So I actually formulated a plan on how we could improve this, how I could get the ball rolling, shall we say. So I'm going to swap computers now. I'm going to go to that.
And while you do that, I think we'll maybe ask Simon to chip in with an answer to the eternal photogrammer's question. Can you scan mud?
Yes. The question is, do you want to? Yeah, you can. There are parts of Vobster that you can't scan. In the pit, the special place in hell reserved for people like border agents. It's just too liquid and too move. It actually moves. It isn't solid. It's so transitional, that hole. I've looked at it and thought, do you know what? Let's just leave it as a blank space saying here there be dragons or whatever, and just leave it out. But you can scan mud and silt. It's fine. It always has texture. It's got quite good texture, and that's really what you need for photogrammetry, is texture, so that when the software looks at the image, it can find what we call feature points, things that it can recognize, clumps of pixels, if you like, that it can then match to the neighboring images and turn feature points into what we call tie points. And it's the tie points that you want that align and maintain the alignment of the images. So yeah, you can. Again, can I and should I? As Tim has alluded to, I get bored, and the idea of running a scooter up and down mud is just not where it's at for me. I'll quite happily accept any volunteer that wishes to do that, and I'll quite happily teach them how to do it, but it's not for me.
That's how you recruit new project members, isn't it? You go, well, you know, you can get to here, you've got to scan a whole lot of mud.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's your
bring me back 5,000 images.
It's the apprenticeship. Yeah. Yeah. No, we're not actually that cruel. I wouldn't do anything that I wouldn't ask someone to do that if I wasn't willing to do it myself. I'd give them something much more interesting to do.
So Marcus, what has Simon asked you to do that he said he'd do himself?
Nothing. It has been a very much a cooperative. In fact, no, I tell a lie. He made me swim. I didn't want to swim. I wanted to go behind a scooter, but Simon
perhaps you could talk us through an equipment upgrade that might be available to divers in order to accomplish such wide-ranging things.
Yeah, you see, I will use a scooter, and I have, and it is a very, very efficient tool. But it's like anything.
We're coming back to cost benefit again, aren't we?
Yeah, you can start to generate an awful lot of crap very quickly if you're not thinking in the mindset of photogrammetry in the first place. And to go back to the mud, could we do the whole of the lake and the mud? Yes, we could. We could do it now with greater confidence, knowing where we are, because we'd have a guide that we'll talk about shortly as to tell us where we've been. But if you're just going to go up and down with a scooter, there's every chance you're generating rubbish and junk data, or you're going over the same track twice, not realizing it, because you've got no means of knowing where you've been. And it's easy to do this, and it's easy to run over and over and over the same patch, and you're wasting your time. I hate being cold. I hate being underwater at times when I'm not delivering something that's productive. I hate wasting my time. So that scooter is like a double-edged sword. When you can use it, and typically it's in good viz, use it, because it will automate and sort of turn you into some sort of processing mech. But when the viz is not so good, when you're not really sure where you're going, you're just generating trouble.
Okay.
And processing problems.
Well, we're going to hold your where are you thought for a moment, like a flower waiting to burst in the spring. And in the meantime, I think if we head back to Marcus to show us, have you got the round me thing, Marcus?
I can get that one open, yeah.
Shall I talk for a moment?
I can get around me open very quickly, in fact. Here we go.
Okay. So the cool thing about all of this is that having started out doing individual models of individual things at Vobster and linking them to the website for people to kind of pick and choose, like a sort of box of Quality Street, Marcus then came up with a thing which linked together the whole overview of Vobster and accessed all the individual models, not via having to go back to a list and all the rest of it, but instead enabled us to just click on a thing and then go to a link and find out what was under the lake. And this And my background is very much in public communication and bringing the underwater world alive to people. It was an absolute game changer. This was kind of all my dreams for this kind of project realized. And so this is very exciting. You can see here we've got Vobster, we've got little information points showing all the individual things underneath it. And at one point you could actually head into this. The weather is, of course, always sunny at Vobster as well. That's important to remember.
Always sunny at Vobster.
Always sunny at Vobster.
So,
And each of these eye points here represents something that you could go and see underwater. So if you want to plan your dive, this is how to turn this into, that is the greatest one. You've gone straight to the source there, haven't you?
This is the big sell. If you're not inspired to visit Vobster after this, I don't know.
Now, every wreck has a story, and indeed, this sad, deflated vestige of a safety boat does have a story, because in 1993, I was up at University College North Wales in Bangor, and we had really rubbish diving boats, and we wanted to go on an expedition to the Outer Hebrides, which I had undertaken as part of my BZAC Advanced Diver certification. Brilliant idea 6 weeks before you do your oceanography finals. Maybe the two of those don't work so well together. But one of the boats we bought was this. And when I came down to Vobster 15 or so years later, we were looking for a safety boat. And I was like, oh yeah, Humber, 16 foot, 50 horse, da, 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 da. It's a wicked thing. And the owners at that point found one in North Wales. Now we went up, collected it, sneaked in a dive at Dorothea, came back in a day. And when we got back, I was like, this looks really familiar. It's got like a cut down in the transom. It's got a short shaft outboard on it. I'm sure I remember like buying one of these in 1993. And so looked up the hull number, checked it out, and it was that boat. So in fact, a very old friend from an expedition to the Hebrides came back to me 15 years later, sadly ran out eventually and ended up sunk at Vobster, and is now immortalized in terms of Marcus's tour of Vobster Quay. So there you are. It's a heartwarming moment.
And as you'll see, if you've got a good memory, it's changed since Marcus scanned it, because I scanned it this year, and it's settling into the silt, you could say.
Oh, the life of a wreck.
So on the round.me, you'll see that some of these icons have little photos on them. Those go to other 360 photos, and the eyes are just come up with a text box to the.
This is more exciting.
Sketchpad link, but I will see if I can share the link to this later on. But yeah, round.me is a really easy way of making these 360 tours. But one of the things that one of my plans with this is to actually progress this further. And one of the people I've brought on board for the into the project is Mike Postons, who runs 3D Media, which is kind of part of Fourth Element. I'm not sure exactly what, but they're certainly work out of the same place. I'm sure that Simon can talk more about Mike actually as they work together on the Thistlegorm. But I've brought Mike on board into the project, and although he hasn't actually, his remit hasn't been made yet, he will be facilitating the end user experience. So hopefully we can have a kind of a tour like this, and instead of having just a link there, actually going to a 360 orbit of the Humber or of the 12-meter shelf or whatever it is that you choose. So that's further down the line. That's yeah.
So Mike and I worked on a couple of things, but mainly the Thistlegorm project that was done in 2017. He did the 360 video when I was busy generating more data than I could process in anything less than 65 days. But Tim, am I allowed to do a commercial plug?
Oh, I've already done it actually.
Okay. So Mike and I are co-authors, along with John Henderson and Alex Mustard, on this wonderful book that you can get from all good bookstores, all about the ultimate dive guide to the Thistlegorm. So That was a labour of love too,
It's
but
pretty cool.
thoroughly enjoyable.
I had a copy recently, and I've been thumbing through it all over Christmas in between things, and it's really reignited a sort of flame in me for diving, which, you know, the last 30 years has gone up and down and up and down. And photogrammetry, in terms of bringing things back for other people to see, and in particular, sort of revealing things for non-divers to see, which, you know, we're all privileged to go underwater. We're privileged to have that ability, that health, equipment, investment, whatever. There's so much down there that we can talk about with other people, which is so very, very cool. And I think that sort of neatly leads into, okay, so we've got a whole place that we could go and see. And Simon alluded to it just earlier on, and we held that thought. And I think we just held Simon for long enough to link neatly into how we might combine both photogrammetry and an underwater guide. So for those of you with terminally abysmal compass skills, this is the moment to wake up, talk to Simon.
Yeah, let me before we dive into the really what we can only describe as some Gucci kit. Let me share my screen, because we're now into the world of underwater GPS, and this has been there's been two desires that come out of this project. One, where the hell am I? Two, where the hell have I been? Because I don't want to go over the same track twice. I don't want to replicate data. I want the right level of overlap. I don't want to be leaving gaps. I'm looking around this featureless place, and I need to know where I am. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time. And the other dream I had was, I want to know where my camera is, and I want to use that GPS position of where that camera is, just like I did on the topside stuff, but I want to do it underwater. And I'm not interested in measuring anything while I'm down there, because I hate tape measures and I get bored. And it needs two people, and you never quite know if you're pulling the tape measure straight or whether it's, you know, is it held on the right thing? Are they measuring it on the right end? Whatever. It's got so many ways of introducing errors. So I want to just swim around things, and I want to be able to just press the shutter when I want to, and then I want to be able to attach a GPS position to that camera. From that, I want to scale my model. That's all I want. And we actually achieved it. This is the first model that was ever done using, in Vobster certainly, that was ever done and scaled directly from GPS. The scale bars that I've got in there are not really scale bars. They're not actually impacting the size, the constraints on the model. It's all done by the cameras and the positions. If we have a look at the references here, just to go into a little bit techie, you can see that we've got, these are all the cameras. If I just turn those on, you'll see them run round the outside of the screen. But we've got longitude, latitude, and altitude. We're showing the estimated values at the moment, but that's effectively what we've got. And if I just make those just a little bit smaller, there we go. So you can see that I've run round the 432, the little tank. There's how many images in this? I think about 300, just capturing the outside. But as I was working, I had the UIS tracker on me, and from that we could then merge the cameras with the GPS position.
And the UIS tracker is a system that consists of a buoy, which is GPS and acoustic, and a little blob that you're carrying.
Yeah, there's 3 buoys in the lake, and all the time you can see 3 buoys with the tracker. You're getting a fix, and from that fix you can then extract the time, as long as you synced your camera to the time that you're in the lake, using time sync to merge the camera, effectively this file name here with this information here. And by doing that, we can then reconstruct stuff. And this little 3D model here, if I just turn it on shaded and just turn it on shaded, model textured, there we go. Just bear with me a second. There we go. Turn the cameras off. This model is all driven from those positions of these cameras. You can also scale things from markers. You know, you can constrain things like we've done with the ring, using targets or markers. So you can force longitude, latitude, and altitude values in here as well. Or you can just scale it using scale bars. Now what I've got here are these scale bars. If we just turn these on, you can see that into the scene, I put these two L-shaped things that have got what we call coded targets on. You can just see these coded targets here. And Metashape looks at these images and finds these targets, so it creates these points automatically. And you can then put in distance lines between the two. And if we just have a look at the estimate, this point here and this point here is a known and fixed 0.25 of a meter, 250 millimeters, same from here to here. And what we've got is here the estimated value. So using nothing but GPS positions from the camera, we've got within 7 millimeters of the real world. And this was the first go. And I can remember sitting in the caving club club room processing this, and I looked at these values when it finished and went, wow, first go, 7 millimeters. What's that? I don't know, 5%. Yeah, you know, this is a game changer. And it was thanks to Perty's support, really, that he came over and we had a couple of days messing around in the lake. And afterwards, I was hooked. It was the moment, a bit like when I dropped 2D photography for 3D. I've now said I don't really want to work on any project unless I'm using underwater GPS because of the value it brings on so many levels. And as a leap forward, this was a big one. And this happened in January this year. Unfortunately, the way things have gone, we haven't really exploited it as much as we thought we might. But if we just have a look at, I've got here all of the chunks I've worked on this year using UIS. And if we start to just zoom out a little bit, you can see the 432. You can start to see the Jacquin. We've got Marcus's ring, so to speak. And then we've got, if I just turn these markers off, we've got the caravan, we've got Poppy, we've got the helicopter, the wheelhouse, crushing works, the escort, parts of the plane. All of these are actually individual pieces, but because they're all geo-referenced, they hang together and they understand where each thing is. And even the little safety boat is hanging over here. It's let me see, from there to there, it's 43.4 meters. You know, you can take any measurement you want in this project between different chunks, and because they've got those values, the GPS positions, you can say with some confidence that's the distance. And this to me was the it's one of those eureka moments where you think, yep, that's it, got it. And it's going to open up other ways of working as well. We don't need to do everything continuously. We don't need to scan the mud unless we really want to. We don't need to have continuous joins between everything. We can get it and work on it and fill gaps in later if we need to. And even things, for example, if we take a look at the this one here, where are we? Let's have a look at this one. Just bear with me while we switch over. It's getting to be quite a busy model. You can see here that this was scanned. We've got some gaps, but crucially, we've got the outline of the helicopter. So all I did on the first dive, or the first time I visited, was just went round the helicopter and then later added the helicopter in, because we've got these fixed positions now on the lake bed. We can go back and put in what's in the footprint afterwards. And even with things like the, where are we? This here, the 2017 wheelhouse, this was scanned in 2017 initially. So it's old data, but crucially, we can reuse it. All I did was go round the footprint of it and then merge in the 2017 data. So we can now look at it in context, but I haven't had to go round the whole wheelhouse again. So some of the stuff that we've got from, I don't know, 2017 onwards really we can start to work with and use and apply using this method. Not everything needs to be georeferenced. You can see here that this little T stands for transformed. That means it's been moved from its original XYZ, and it's been moved from its XYZ when I aligned it with its footprint, and the footprint's got an R. R means it's referenced. Referenced means it's got GPS positioning. So this is a completely new way and quite an exciting way of working on massive projects. It starts to make me think about how I approach the thistlegorm. And it's like everything that I've done ever since, pretty much from the beginning. Would I do it the same way again? The short answer is no, I wouldn't.
So this is, I mean, we've had a lot of conversations over the years about where you start as a photogrammetry person. And I think this is a really important thing for everyone who's feeling overawed about where this project has grown into and kind of where they are now. And I would count myself as someone who is, you know, despite understanding what you've done and being part of the project, in terms of my personal photogrammetry, I'm still very much of what you would generously term the blob level of photogrammetry.
Everyone starts somewhere.
For those of you who aren't in on that particular joke, Simon regards everything that isn't georeferenced as a blob, because you don't know where it is and you don't know what shape it is. But if you manage to delineate various control points on all the corners, then it all crunches down and it all becomes a lot more real. And so this is the thing at which point I personally suddenly become more useful to Simon again, because I could create something that he would only have to scan around the bottom with UIS in order to make my humble finger painting, in terms of photogrammetry terms, more useful to him and the greater good. Now, that is truly exciting, because I think it kind of opens the door to something that's close to my heart, which is citizen science. That you can take divers with photogrammetry equipment or cameras, and with some training and appreciation of what data is and how we can make best use of it, enables them to contribute towards bigger projects, which of course makes us all feel a whole heap better. And so I'm very, very keen on this. And I can remember the moment when Simon and Perty were sat in the Wessex cave hut, kind of going, oh my goodness. And then we went out to the Queen Vic for a celebratory libation and lunch. And that was all rather cool. And that was in January, early February this year. So we're kind of bang up to date now. But I think to put all of what Simon's got with UIS in context, I think Marcus has got some behind the scenes pictures of the UIS kit that can help us understand what you need in order to achieve that kind of position fixing.
Yeah, bear with me, Call. I haven't prepped those images.
Oh,
yeah. Before you go there, actually, let me just dip in. Actually, no, I'll hold back. Actually, remind me of the future, Tim.
I have done.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Doc. It's 1955. We're going to hit the tower.
Something like that. Yeah.
Here's the hoverboard.
So it's probably easier if Simon actually talks through this. I'll just host the photos.
Yeah. So on the left, we've got the three buoys. You can see those are the bits that sit in the lake. They're about a meter and a half below the surface. The left-hand side that is off the frame at the moment is a float with a GPS antenna. So the GPS signal is being fed down that steel tube into that little box, a yellow box at the bottom, which is then pinging out and talking to the tracker unit that's on the tablet there. And the tablet is something I didn't discuss. The tablet's another very, very exciting and cool piece of kit. It is a tablet. It is a Samsung Galaxy that you can navigate with. And I was slightly skeptical, but when Perty arrived, he said that he'd put the orthophoto of Vobster as an overlay into the navigation software. And when we were down there looking at this, I'm thinking, I can see the helicopter is coming. Oh yeah, there's the helicopter. And we've actually given the tablet to people that have never visited Vobster before, never even dived the lake, and then gone, take me to the helicopter, just follow the line. And they've gone, I don't know where the helicopter is. You don't need to, just follow the line. And you arrive at the helicopter. And you get this squeal of excitement through the reg or through the loop. And you think, well, it really is that good. And what it does is it makes going back to somewhere you want to go or to do a job really easy, because you can mark it, position it, and then return to it. And then this, what we're looking at now on screen, has to be, for me, probably one of the most surreal experiences of my underwater life. I've got the tablet and I'm looking at a model of the helicopter. Now, that was something I downloaded from Sketchfab before I went in. And that model of the helicopter is of the helicopter that's right in front of me. So I'm looking at the thing on this tablet, looking at the thing in the lake, and it's just like, how is this going to, how can this be exploited? And the short answer is, just think of that as a dive guide.
Yes.
You could just go around a battleship, picking off everything you want to see and never missing a damn thing. And everyone could have this experience if they wanted to. Everyone could enjoy it, and it just works so well. And on this one, we've got Marcus. Marcus is laying a track on the scooter. You'll notice that there's been an alarm kicked off at the top. It says shark. You've got two-way comms. You can talk to the surface with sort of equivalent of a simple text message, and you can talk to your diver from the surface. You've got a series of pre-configured messages that you can send, and one of which is the warning for shark. So if you've ever been on the lake with the tablet, you will get a message at some point saying shark. It's just part of the ritual of induction into the team, if you like. If you get to play with this, it's great fun. It really is.
And I particularly enjoyed what you tried to write on your initial demo of this software, so that we could see it at the surface, and you were aiming to spell it underwater. But I think we might keep that word as the potential winning prize for a future photogrammetry course competition. Obviously, if anyone wants to sort of fill in their spare time by wondering what that might be, then feel free. When the fun stops, stop, obviously. Yeah. Right, so this is all this is really cool stuff. This really takes something that has started out as a hobby, as something that's been used outside diving before, brings it into diving, and really solves one of those problems for us, which is how you engage people, how you make diving better, how you make diving safer. For example, sort of messages, navigation. We're all facing competition against mountain biking and Strava and all the rest of it. And this is where we as divers start to deliver on introducing people to diving and giving them information to absolutely suck the marrow out of each dive, and information which you could load into an iPad. So you could have that. You can have additional rich media on the dive that they're engaged in. And so photogrammetry suddenly becomes something which actually expands out beyond just a hobby and just a dive. And this is really where all the tools come together. It's phenomenal we've got to this point with the Vobster Photoigrammetry Project. I'm not sure any of us really saw quite how this might pan out.
I think if I was starting again, I wouldn't predict getting to here, but I'm glad I am.
No, it's truly exciting, and I think everyone listening should feel fairly inspired by all of this. It's been an absolute pleasure to sort of look at what's going on here and see it all happen. I think we've got a couple of other outputs. Marcus, did you have the Max's multi-beam sonar?
Oh no, I've got that. 2 seconds.
Oh, have you got that? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is another thing which sort of sprang out of this, is a multi-beam scan of the quarry.
Yeah, so this is kind of where we're heading. I wouldn't say next, but at some point. Oh, that's interesting. It's had a graphics glitch.
Zoom seems to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really hogged my wonderful demo. But this is multi-beam data of the quarry. You can see here the crushing works. You can see, I think this is the Jacquin, there's the wheelhouse. So we've got all this multi-beam data. According to Max, it's not really high resolution, but I'm looking at this and thinking that suddenly filled the abyssal plain. We don't have to bother with all this. So it has value. And the latest version of Metashape allows you to import laser and this kind of data and merge it with photogrammetry. So one thing I was working on I've only just got this in the last few days. I've been very busy writing the course for the police, but I haven't had a massive time to look at it. But what's coming is merging this into the photogrammetry, and that suddenly starts to open up another completely different field. But multi-beam, I think, is really good. It doesn't give you anything like the level of detail you get from photogrammetry, but what it does is it tells you where to go. It tells you what to look at. If I was looking at this from a fresh, I would want to know what that is. I want to know what these are. Anything that stands out on the seabed, just like sonar, I want to have a look. What's that lump there? What's it doing? What are these here? So it tells you where, quite literally, where to go. And because this is georeferenced as well, we can load this into the tablet, into your UIS tablet, and use this as a direct navigation. So we wouldn't have to waste time trying to figure out where we were when we get in on a site. We just go to what we want to look at. Simple, easy, get on with it. This is fitting into my perfect data, efficient delivery head that really is just, well, like I say, like Tim said, I get bored very quickly. And if you give me a repetitive task to do over and over again, I'll do one of two things. I'll either do it so badly you never invite me back, or I find the automated way. and
never going to get you out of something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To give you an idea, sorry, Max says that this data is from a MBES multi-beam echo sounder. Each cone of sound is 1.4 degrees, 1.4 degrees by 1.4 degrees. He says that a really good one would be 0.4 degree angle on each one of those pings. So yeah, he says this is.
Yeah, we've had the hummingbird dudes, Raymarine hummingbird dudes, testing their stuff here, and they've come out with some really phenomenal stuff. I mean, I've seen Max, seen this one. They're comparable, but they are really getting good results with much higher frequency stuff, but obviously less range in that situation and scenario. So
something we have done something we have done as well is, rather than walk around with the tracker unit from UIS, is we've actually sat it for an hour or two in the lake, just recording its position over and over again. So 2 hours of positional data, and you can check the drift then and see how things move and develop more of an averaged position of things. So we're not just restricted to swimming round anymore. We can leave something somewhere, let it record what it has to do, go in and do the dive, come back, and then go and pick the things up later. It's a different way of working. It turns the idea of UIS on its head, but the results were very accurate. So,
well, I think that is truly exciting for anyone that has got a very regularly dived site, at which you have the volume of divers and the interest in divers to develop that kind of critical mass of interest in what's going on in front of them. And if you can then afford a permanent sort of three-way UIS buoy display, you could actually have that available for all divers on that site. So I think there's a question from Dazza there about the Thistlegorm. That's a world-class open goal kind of an opportunity for this sort of thing. But you could really do it for anywhere that you wanted to, or a science site or something else. So I kind of, I'm going to draw this all the way back right to where this started, which was two people having a chat about things that could work and something that could happen. And what has actually ended up expanding and ballooning into something that's got so much more potential than just having something nice to show your mates. And I think that really speaks to me in terms of the essence of why we take things on as hobbyists. We do it for us. We kind of do it for our own thing. and it turns into something that's a bit bigger, and we keep going. As long as they're still fun, we keep going. And quite often it turns into a groundbreaking thing. You can think of loads of things in diving that have come from that kind of arc. Not to over-egg this at all, but it's a lovely thought. Now, there are some questions. There are some sensible questions. I've got a couple of emergency questions.
Sorry, let me just say one thing, which is that the that multi-beam data, we must credit Max's boss for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
At GODSEA Limited, GEODESEA Limited, for letting us use that.
Yeah, big thank you to Max and his boss for that. Much appreciated.
No, there are many thanks due, and I'd quite like to reinforce those, that when we put a link up to the recording of this, that we actually sort of do a bit of a credits thing and make sure that we've covered everybody, because we are, you know, as always, standing on the shoulders of so many other people in terms of their work. I mean, I'd credit Bob Anderson and the Houghton, and Claire Fitzsimmons and the world of photogrammetry is full of people that have gone before. Just as a roundup, there was one here from Simon. I think this is definitely a question for you. What about vegetation? Does it move? And
Bioclutter.
I'm going to add fish.
Yeah,
Fish.
yeah, fish are less of a problem.
Fish.
Yeah, there's I've encountered wildlife problems several times. They, on their own, they're fine. In a mass, they're an absolute bastard, put it bluntly. And there's two occasions. One on the Valentine tanks in Poole Bay is I had a school of bib, pelagic fish here in the UK, going around the turret, and they actually caused no end of problems, because I ended up with an amorphous blob, sort of silvery brown blob on top of the turret, and it was the schooling fish. Because fish are very uniform but moving, it fooled the photogrammetry software into thinking that the points were valid, and it matched images when it shouldn't. I had to go around and mask out every bloody fish, but you can do it, you can get around it. And then the other big problem, which, yeah, it's almost like I've still got the scars on, so I don't like talking about it too much, was on the Cowlshire in Scarpa Flow. I went up there to scan the wreck. That was the project. We're going to do the wreck. Yeah, we can do the wreck. Great, let's do the wreck. It's big. Yeah, it's big, but I've done the Photogrammetry, no problem. I can do the wreck. Okay, fine. And then you find that every sodding square inch of the Cowlshire is covered in brittle stars. And when I mean covered, I mean there's like layers of them, matting on them. And I shot 3,000 images on the first dive, thinking this is all happy days. I got 10 a line. Oh, hang on a minute, I must be doing something wrong here. So I went and tried another method. No, I just another 2,500 images. No, it still went a line. And then I started to look harder at the images and realized, and in the end I sent them to Agisoft and said, I've got a problem. I need to be able to align starfish. And they came back and said there's actually two problems. One is they're so uniform, we're finding matched points all over the place. And the second problem is the damn things are moving between frames. Their little arms are doing this. The bastards were waving at me as I go by and screwing up the model.
Simon, everyone's got to eat.
Yeah, but these guys, you know, we started to get creative on how to solve the problem, and it anything from build a cofferdam and drain the water out, scrape them off, to deploy their predators all over the wreck, to somehow poison them, to radiate them on. Anyway,
I know that you've been involved in Drain the Oceans.
Yes.
So that's not quite what we're looking for. I mean, myself, half my degree was marine biology, so I can't quite do build a cofferdam, etc. But we did have exactly the same problem on the V83 in Scapa Flow at the end of a photogrammetry course in 2017, and we had 4 teams. And in a couple of days, we'd taken people who were going like, oh, it's not aligning. I've got like a banana. It's not georeference. It's off all over the place. And we scanned the stern of the V83, which is in a maximum of like 16 meters of water, with 4 people. So they'd done underneath, they'd done over the top, and the deck gun. But over the top is entirely covered by kelp, because it's in 10 meters of water. And this stuff is doing that gentle kelp susurration, which didn't really help. any photogrammetric
Yeah,
alignment.
that is the worst nightmare that you can come across is vegetation and moving. And it's bad for two reasons. Firstly, it tends to be very uniform, so you get mismatches on the tide points. Secondly, the damn thing's moving, so photogrammetry ignores anything that moves because it just disregards it. So you don't get anything aligning. It's simple as that. And yeah, I've had people go in and clean sites for me to make sure.
Have you awoken in a cold sweat?
Yes. I've put clauses in contracts. I'm not joking.
All the way home with those counts.
Yeah.
Marcus,
I went all the way to Port Royal, Jamaica, and I made it quite clear if the damn thing had any vegetation on anything, I could scan it all I like, and you can pay me to go, and I'm going to come back with nothing. And they went, yeah, go anyway. It'll make good telly.
Marcus, have you got any stories about inappropriate movement?
Oh, I say. Well, I think I'll just give you a photo.
Oh yeah, the fly.
Oh, there it is.
Fly.
How many images?
Yeah, somehow this managed to get into my housing, and this was actually, I think February this year. We had a US Open day, and I have about 2,500 photos. I think I had about 2,000 photos of this fly that my lens because it's a fisheye lens, had managed to focus on. It was so inside my dome pores, and unfortunately that was a complete written off dive because of said fly.
You've got some awesome bokeh there, and the backgrounds. The fly is pin sharp, but
yeah.
So in terms of completely human confessions and fails, I think that's a big up to Marcus there for, admitting that we are all at heart fairly human divers, and stuff happens to us. Now, I think we can kind of turn this back on Simon Brown and ask him if he's ever been subject to an unwanted photogrammetry fail in his career. And I can think of one you've told me about.
Yeah. Shall I share it? Was it the thistlegorm?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, it was the thistlegorm. Yeah. So by day 4, I'd done the outside and done the steam trains and done everything that I wanted to do, everything, the whole wreck. I'd seen it as a sparse cloud. So I started to go into the cargo holds, and I'd done the upper deck, but then there was the lower deck to do, and the lower deck is actually better condition because it's got more accessible, even though it's deeper. And I set myself a challenge. Could I do the whole deck in one dive? It's 5,000 images in the end. And could I actually deliver this? So I started in hold number 1 and I went all the way around hold number 1. Yep, this is great. This is awesome. Went into hold number 2. Hadn't seen it before, but clicked away, did all the motorbikes. Brilliant. Yeah, this is fantastic. My strobe battery's now dying. I've done 3,000 frames. Okay, I'll just slow down a bit. I'll let the strobe batteries, because I can see the end on this. I can see it's only another 500 images and I've done it. Something like that. Anyway, I then decided it probably good idea to have a look at my decompression requirements. And I racked up a bit of deco, we could say. And task loading is a bitch and a master. And if you're not paying attention to the world around you, photogrammetry can consume you in its entirety. I then decided it'd be a good idea to look at how much gas I was carrying. Now I always dive with a twin set, and I have gas, but then I did a quick calculation in my head and realized it was probably a good time to just turn the frigging batteries off on the strobe and go, because I was going to spend quite a long time decompression, even though it was on nitrox. So first stop was at 12 meters, and at the 12-meter stop, the Egyptian crew that were working with me came down past me and waved. And yes, hello, yeah, great, thanks. And I then had to work my way up to 6 meters, and I was still at the 6 meter stop when they came back, finishing their dive, waving at me. And all I'd gone was from 11 to 6 meters or 12 to 6 meters in that 20 minutes that they'd been down there. And I was starting to calculate, knowing my surface consumption rate, how many bars I was going to get out on. And the answer was I broke the rule of thirds quite big, and I will confess to that because it's worth sharing. Don't get sucked into this to the point it becomes an obsession. Don't set yourself arbitrary goals. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Remember that this is an environment that will kill you for neglect or certainly give you problems. And don't let the task loading consume everything. And it was only, I was out on 30 bars in each cylinder, which was beyond my comfort level by a long way, as it should be. But it serves as a lesson to me not to really get sucked into this too much and become the obsessive. But also then now, 3 years later, I feel comfortable enough sharing it to say, yeah, I fucked up, to put it bluntly. And it was only luck that got me out. So, or a dying strobe battery that got me out. Otherwise, who knows? So I hate to say it, end on a downer, but you do need to be careful. This environment, is intended to be.
It's not the end.
Visited. Yeah, exactly.
You are here.
We are only transitory. We're transitory. Yeah. We're visitors. Yes, exactly.
By good dive judgment at the right time, got out. And that's why the rule of thirds is there. Because if you hadn't been diving the rule of thirds and you dived right up until the end, that would have caught you out and bitten your ass in a much worse way. So I think, if you are thinking about getting into photogrammetry, we've got all these wonderful toys and this incredible potential for exciting so many divers about all of this. But we have to remember that we're far more use if we come back time and time and time again. And really going back again to get some more stuff is still better than pushing it and having a gnarly situation, which results in, well, just unwanted trauma. It isn't really worth it. So
as long as those divers don't nick stuff, we can go back.
Yes.
If everything stays where it is, we can go back and finish the job.
And there are so many projects around the place which are going on about. For me, this goes right the way back to Jacques Cousteau's Museum of the Oceans. Is that we now have the tool to take pictures of things and build 3D models of items that are in situ, around battleships in Scapa Flow. That's a hot spot for things that are going on here. There are items which we can't remove from the seabed that we can now photogrammetrically scan and bring back for either experts, or we can bring them back for amateurs who are interested, who want that kind of connection. And we can all of us do that. And we haven't really sort of touched on how far outside Vobster this has gone. But Marcus has got some examples of, was it late 2019 in Truck? Was that the year?
Yes, I went to Truck in 2019.
So we've got Thistlegorm from Simon, which is the subject of, oh my goodness me.
I promise he's not on commission. I absolutely promise, but I'm very grateful, Tim. Yeah.
Well, we'll do plug your pluggables at the end, but in the meantime, let's have a look at where Marcus has gone with his gear.
Yes, let me just open up the Truck Photogrammetry Project page at the moment. So, I was invited to go to Truck last year by Pete Mesley from Lust for Rust, and Pete's goal was to try and scan all of the wrecks in Truck Lagoon, and the idea being is that the wrecks are forever deteriorating. I mean, they're what, 76, 77 years old now. And I mean, everyone dives wrecks and go, oh, remember what it was like when I first dived, it's completely different now, and all the rest of it. And actually, one of the things that Pete wants to do was to basically try and scan all the wrecks, and it means that they will be there forevermore. But also not only scan the wrecks, but to be able to do an ongoing project of so that you can actually look at what's happening to them. So if we go to this one here, I'll share my screen for you. This is one of my my favourite wrecks, which is the Amagisan Maru when it's loading, once it's loaded, rather. There is a truck wreck baseline project Facebook group that you can see quite a lot of the stuff with. So yeah, this is the Amagisan Maru. It took me 2 dives to do this properly. Unfortunately, it did have quite a lot of wreck fog on it, which kind of messed up the first lot of the first lot of alignment. So I was able to kind of get half of it from one dive and half of it from another dive. But it's funny because Pete has been going to, he's done 30 odd trips to truck, I think, and he looked at this model and he went, there's a big hole in the side of it. Well, yes, there is a big hole. That's where the torpedo will have hit it, Pete. So, yeah, but I've never seen it. And you're talking about someone who, as I said, he's done 30 odd trips to truck. Everyone always goes to the does the deck side and goes into the engine room and does all those sorts of bits, and just completely ignores the why would you want to swim along about just around along the hull. Sorry, that's he was absolutely amazed. Another thing that this wreck shows is that in the last couple of years, the stern castle has actually broken away. So there used to be a stern gun around about here. That stern gun is now down here. You can see the pedestal for it, and it's in the sand, and you can see exactly what's happened, which is one of my fingers work, is that the stern castle is completely torn away. This bit here used to be attached to the hull over here, and it's just suddenly exposed all of the, so you can now see the steering quadrant inside here, all the steering gear, and yeah, so that's kind of one of the ones that I've done. In the time that I was over there, I think we did about 8 complete wrecks. I did 2 aircraft. I mean, I have to say that there is a distinct difference between what Simon does and what I do. I have to say, I'm very much a jump in feet first and pretty pictures, and Simon is as he says, very much accuracy based. So
Slightly obsessive.
with regards to that model, you would have seen that yes, it does have a curve in it. I mean, there's no there was no scaling done on that whatsoever. There's no geolocation or anything like that, georeferencing. It was purely just a case of get down there, get as much data as we can, get some pretty pictures, move on, because the whole idea of the project that Pete wanted was purely visual. He wants to be able to get a pretty model, and then ultimately over time you can see the big visual changes that happen between the wrecks. It would have been lovely to have been able to scale it, to have georeferenced it and all the rest, but it just simply wasn't the budgets, wasn't the time. But hopefully we'll when truck opens back up, when COVID is all over, we'll be back over there doing some more. But one of the things that Pete was, one of his ideas was, well, let's try and move it beyond kind of just the truck wreck baseline projects, and actually, wouldn't it be cool to have a worldwide baseline project? So going back to Tim's citizen science, everyone doing bits and bobs here and there, then wouldn't it be cool to actually create this this database of however this model directory of all your favorite wrecks? So if you go diving, I mean, if photogrammetry is getting easier, you could do it from a blobby blob, or you could do it to a detailed blob. Ultimately, it's all cataloging what is there, and then as time goes on, you can see exactly what is happening to these wrecks, and people can actually look at these wrecks before they dive them. They can do a dive plan from them, and all the rest of it. I think that's where the future is, I think.
I think you're excused with the immortal saying that it's is it the right time to jump in a stub fighter and shoot something? Which for those of you who follow such things will totally understand. And I think that's where a lot of us start. I mean, certainly on the kind of pilot projects that I was involved in 2016, all I had was a GoPro. And I managed to get in there. And after a couple of days of shooting bits of hull and bits of things, we managed to make a model of a previously unknown, unidentified drifter in scapa flow with a bunch of extra dumped cable on the bows. And that led to an identification, which was cool. Now, that is, of course, a GoPro. It's something that we can all got and we can all afford. And if that's your starter for whetting your appetite towards moving towards what actually really is the full Monty, which is DSLR and some underwater GPS US positioning, and which is, I'll put my dollars on the table now. It's going to become part of the diving in the future before our lifetimes are out. I think the idea that people go diving and have a guide to their dive underwater is going to ride off the back of this. Not necessarily totally the Vobster thing, but the collective efforts of us all across the globe and our willingness to bring things forward in a citizen science kind of a way. So there are ways in which you as ordinary divers can contribute. Undoubtedly, it doesn't matter what you've got in terms of in your hand as a camera or at home in terms of processing. Where you start is where you start. The journey of 1,000 miles starts exactly where you are now, and it's truly exciting. And it's where Marcus and Simon have both started in their own little way. So we've got a couple of questions which are, I'm just going to take a moment and scroll back up.
While you're looking at searching for questions, Tim, one thing that I haven't shared with you so far is the author mosaic of the
cool. That's nice.
2019. As far as you got in 2019. So an author mosaic is a flat images. It's the photogrammetry software rectifies the images to make them flat. And so this is effectively like looking at a map as opposed to looking at an aerial photo. So the distortion is taken out of it. I think this one, in theory, Agisoft is claiming about 5 millimeters per pixel. I think this one. I'm unsure how accurate that is, because I know it's certainly a mixture of aerial photos which were not as that had a completely different ground sampling distance to the underwater stuff, but ultimately it's not bad, I don't think. And so as you can see, we can zoom in here and we can go to, for instance, the pit down here with the asterisk in the bottom of it, with the sticker on that says I caught crabs in the dive boat. We can go to the jackal in here. We can go to the wheelhouse, and so on and so forth. So this is an interesting one, actually. 2 days, 2 different scans. One day the Jester was upright, and then the next time I scanned it, someone pushed it over. But ultimately, I've not gone through the data to clean that up. I think it's quite an interesting example of exactly what happens with sites as time goes on. So yeah, you can see that when change happens, but in some ways that's good, and in other ways that's a real pain in the ass. And then we have for everything over here. You have the crusher, you have the
and your tires as well. Look at
one thing
pathway
earlier, which was I had an absolute devil of a time trying to align Poppy, the caravan, the drilling rig with everything else, because it was just silt, and it was just such a I went over it many times and with no joy. And then I was thinking about putting lines down there with bits of tape or something like that, just to add texture. And then I suddenly thought, oh, Tim put a load of tyres in for this helicopter to land on, and it's not sitting on tyres. There are lots of tyres everywhere. And I said, do you mind if I kind of move some tyres? And it would work out really well, because the problem with lines is obviously it's an entanglement hazard, but it can be used as a path for divers to follow. So Duncan and I, one day, we grabbed our scooters and picked up tyres from the pile that was here, made a path to the poppy. We made a path going from the poppy to the caravan, and we made a path from poppy to the drilling rig and over to the north wall over here. And we also went from here to the Jester's wheelhouse. So that, by adding those tyres in there, suddenly it all aligned. It was this was obviously pre-US days. I mean, the stuff that's Simon, the examples that Simon has shown with the georeferenced data, you aren't needing said linking pieces, but this was long before the US system came on board with us. So it's yes, that was on dronelab.io, Mark.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was great. An interesting way of improvising, adapting, and overcoming. Very British, I think.
Using old tyres.
Yes,
Let's
make it work.
It's a good job someone had piled those up somewhere useful. That's all I'll say.
Yes.
I wouldn't worry about it too much, because I've used my bicycle as a scale bar topside.
Excellent.
There's always ways to solve problems.
But if it works, then why not? And if you're looking at depending on the scale that you want, I mean, yeah, it will do, won't it? Something is better than nothing in a lot of cases.
Totally. I think we've come to the end of the content that we had planned. We've managed to run over our planned time by a whole hour and 10 minutes because it's sort of grown and been so exciting. I think we've answered a lot of questions that came up in the chat that we've managed to work into what we wanted to do here tonight. But if anybody has got any really burning questions that we haven't done already, or which we can't do sort of later on by informal contact, I think now's a good time for those questions. So would anybody like to unmute, and maybe if we take a few questions and maybe aim to finish by 9:30 would be a cool thing.
I'm actually stunned that we've held the. There's either nothing else going on tonight, or we've done something that's okay. I'll leave it to the audience to decide.
You've done something that's cool and inspiring. But anybody got anything they'd like to sing up about that we haven't covered?
Just quickly, Tim, Snick here.
Hi, Nick.
Strobes or torches?
Strobes.
Photogrammetry.
Strobes every time. The reason is twofold. Firstly, you can work faster because the burst of light that you get from a strobe freezes the action. The actual best time to work for photogrammetry is almost in the pitch black, but with very clear water, because you can control the light completely. Strobes allow you to do that, for me at least, with stills, and you get that burst of light that is like a thousandth of a second that freezes the action, and it's the sharpness of the image that helps drive the ultimate quality of the 3D model and all the alignment that goes with it. Secondly, you can work faster because the strobe, you can move the camera quickly between flashes. With video, it works, but I've used it, but I just feel that it slows the process down a little bit because you cannot pan quickly. You have to pan slowly, otherwise you get blur. And if you get motion blur in the image, then you get basically some junk data. So for me, it strobes every time. I can work really quickly and cover off a site very, very quickly indeed. Bang, 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 bang. On the scooter, it's a frame a second. When I'm working stills manually, as I'd call it, it's probably less than 1 a second.
Thanks, Simon.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool point, because from where I'm coming from, as very much the more ordinary diver who wants to get into this, I've been rolling a GoPro, I've been rolling some video lights, and they've worked for all right projects. Like, it's delivered what I wanted in a limited sense. So the GoPro has been of limited resolution. I've made my things. I've been able to orientate people. The video lights have had a certain burn time, but never more than about 20 or 30 minutes. And if you really, horses for courses, if you want to go big on this, then you need to harvest the energy resource that you're taking underwater. And everything that Simon says is more valid for the more advanced photogrammer. But if you've got a GoPro and some video lights,
yeah, you're in the game.
Start there.
You've got skin in the game, as they say.
And build up. And
I would actually say that so for quality, yes, I'll go strobes every time. However, I think that video lights do have a very useful element to them if you're lazy like I am. If you are, for instance, I mean, one of the things I have used video lights for is when there has been a great depth change across the model. So, for instance, I did at Enduck, I did from the bus at 15 meters straight down to the boat at 76 meters. And what I was able to do there by using video lights is set my camera to basically to auto. And by having constant lighting and the camera changing the exposure settings, that meant that I didn't have to modify everything as I went down. But I'm not saying that is the correct way. I'm not saying that I got as good a output from that as I would have with strobes and if I put the time in. But as I said, I have to say I'm quite lazy when it comes to things like that. So I think, yeah, some lighting is better than no lighting. Strobes will probably give you a much sharper image, but I think the video lights do have their place as well.
I would say laziness can be a virtue at times.
Yeah, it's not laziness, it's efficiency. If I can find someone else to get the beer from the fridge, then I'll
always get a lazy person to do your job. It'll be done much more efficiently.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's written on my shirt somewhere. Anyway, we haven't got any more questions popping up on the chat. Has anybody got anything else here?
Don't be shy. Now's the time.
Speak now or forever hold your...
We are around later as well. I mean, like beyond this in the world, it doesn't end here.
One thing I would suggest, I don't know if it has been answered. People have been saying they dive Vobster a lot and would be interested in getting involved and whatnot. I would say, yes, please do. One thing I would say, though, is that it would be really beneficial to do one of Tim and Simon's photogrammetry courses and use that as a starting point and to get you going, start teaching certainly teach you the basics and yeah, give you a good starting point to getting you on the path of getting not just quantity of data but good data.
Yeah, I'd echo that. My own experience with sort of learning to be a photogrammetry diver and then developing the course is very much that, I 100% respect the hobbyist angle whereby we like to invent things and discover things and do it all ourselves. But in the compressed world that we live in, where our opportunities to dive and the opportunities we have to dive the certain wrecks that we want are compressed, getting your bang for buck becomes more important. And we've designed the course around that. And that course was developed out of a 2017 project funded by Newcastle University involving Carrie and Chris and Kieran Hatton and Claire Fitzsimmons. And then the materials for that were developed by myself and Bob Anderson, Kieran Hatton and Simon Brown, of course, here as well. We've taught it a few times at Vobster with Simon. What we're aiming to do is make sure that we're not wasting your time in terms of going diving, getting that good coverage, that good image overlap. And we haven't talked about any of those photogrammetry basics here. Good even lighting, coordination with your buddy, and all those things which just are where we bring good dive practice and good photogrammetry together is what we're aiming to achieve with that course. So if you are interested, drop us a line. That's all cool. We've got that ready to go as an INTD speciality. If you want to discover it all yourselves, that's also totally cool as well. You know, I'm a big fan of hobbyists and the things that they achieve. So you've got options, everybody. But if you want to sort of short circuit some of that self-learning, we are, of course, here willing to go. And when we go on to plug your pluggables, of course, the ultimate endorsement of that and what we can do is here.
I promise he is not on commission, but I'm very, very grateful to him.
No, I'm not on commission,
Yeah.
but I did get this copy as a very nice Christmas present. And what this combines, I think, is what we haven't talked about tonight, which is how you go from a 3D model of a wreck, which I have now done the whole jigsaw of as well.
You haven't? Have you finished it?
I've done the jigsaw.
Well done. Not many have finished it, Tim. I'd never finished my own jigsaw. I gave up.
Inside it is also lots of material, for example, for what things would look like in the holds versus what they look like on photogrammetry in the holds. It's completely invaluable. I think that's a massive endorsement for not only what Simon's put into things, but also where photogrammetry can go. And you know, why we haven't got these for many other dive sites in the world. It's easy to do wrecks. We should be doing reefs. You know, we've got a whole emphasis at the moment on the survival of life in the ocean and global warming. We can be looking at diver science and coral growth and all kinds of things. This is a technique which should really blow the doors off. So if that's lit a little fire in you, please get in touch and we'd be delighted to point you in the right direction or help out. So, any other questions? No.
Just one other thing. If this really has piqued your interest and you want to take this to what we call the forensic level, the material that we're training the police crash investigators with is available online as a self-paced training course. We've had to go that route because guess what? COVID means we can't go and teach them direct. The downside is we can't teach people directly, but the upside is, well, we've written the course and it's on the, you know, it's available. And as a result, it's open to everybody. And that site is acupixel.co.uk. That's myself and my business partner run that site. And it does, it's like anything. When you sit down to write a course, you think you know your stuff, but then when you really go into it, you learn a whole lot more and realize you didn't know as much as you did. But after you've written the course, suddenly a lot of things make a lot of sense. And it's a very thorough course. It goes way beyond just photogrammetry. It goes into how to create the images rather than just taking, you know, how to create very precise images. What does photogrammetry need from an image to stack the odds in your favor getting a result? And that's half the course. So I will put a link up in the chat if that's okay.
I think
I'll put a link to that as well, Simon, when I post the recording for this.
Brilliant, thank you.
there are many link requests in the chat, and we'll try and get around to that. And I think in the meantime, where I'd like to, having suddenly stumbled into hosting this, where I'd like to end up is bringing this back to Marcus and Simon. And I'd quite like to reference a little White Stripes song here, which we touched on earlier on, is that when you're in your little room having a great idea, and then you have a great idea and it suddenly turns into fruition, how you manage to recapture the excitement of when it was that you were sitting in your little room. So chaps, is it still fun? And are you excited about the future?
Short answer, yes and yes. Longer answer, definitely, because for me, this is a perfect storm in my creative yet very regimented data management orientated head. I've got there's definitely two halves to my brain. There is the very creative, artistic, expressive side that I would do this for nothing, even if I had to, just because the brain says I must, because it's fun. But then there's the data management side of it that says, yeah, but when you do it right. Absolutely. And it has to be trusted. I want to go to the 432 model and measure the lifting eyes and then compare it to what's in the operator's manual and say, can I build a frame to lift that if I need to? The answer is yes. And that to me is what it's all about.
Cool. And Marcus, what sort of fun are you looking for?
Is it still fun? Yes, it is still fun. I mean, the most recent dive that I did for this project was 2 days ago, Monday. And in fact, I might share this one just so you can have a quick look. I dived with Phil Short, and he laid a line. He was playing with one of his new toys, which is called a Nemo, which is a cave line surveying tool. And basically you lay your cave line and then you put this device on it and it will measure how long the line is. So I thought, he's doing that, I'll just scan the area as well. So I scanned the area and then I put in on the photos, I was able to put the markers in for where his belays were on the cave line, and I inputted this data. And so by doing that, I have now achieved a scaled model of this area. I mean, I haven't actually compared this to anything, but if we look at the what Agisoft seems to think the errors up here are, I think the largest error it thinks, comparing the photogrammetry data to the Nemo data, is 0.105 meters. So what's that, 10 centimeters? Which I think this seems to be quite I'm quite excited, thinking this seems to be a good alternative to tape measures. A lot more user friendly than tape measures. I'm not saying that this is a replacement or better or worse or anything like that to georeferencing using US. It's just a different system that I think looks quite interesting.
As a scientific diver, I would say that is almost guaranteed to be an alternative to tape measures, because I'm sure there's more than 10 centimeters of tape measure error in tape measure deployment and no referencing there. So if you like scientific diving, this is your thing. And I think that really encapsulates how photogrammetry is part of the range of the tools of divers underwater. And we're heading right back to the start of diving here, because that is how diving started. It was investigation, it was going and seeing, it was science. And all of these tools are suddenly reinventing our understanding of what diving for science actually is. So I think that, coupled with the ability and the acknowledgement that you can start in this as a hobby diver with just a kind of interest in showing people things, owning a GoPro camera and a fairly sort of, reasonable mid-range PC, that you can process this stuff. Now, I'm not making, and none of us are making any promises about not getting hooked. And none of us are making any promises about how much money you might end up spending, or the time that it will absorb, or the cost of that time in terms of seeing other people or just watching green bars process across the screen. We're not responsible for any of that. But I think if...
I've been blamed for it many times.
You might be blamed for it.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
If in some way...
But it's not my fault. Some bigger boys did it, but they're not here anymore.
None of us.
Some bigger boys did it, but they're not here anymore.
You can't find us.
Exactly.
We're not going to be responsible for that. But I think, on the other hand, if you do find yourself massively inspired and your interest is piqued and you want to take it further and all those positive things, then we'd like to be 100% responsible for all of that. So keep in touch and have a great time. And I think what's left here is to thank you all for attending.
Yeah, thank you very much.
to very much thank Marcus and Simon for their time. Both myself as a diver and an INTD instructor and a friend, and the manager of Vobster Quay for all that they have done to bring a very, very exciting view of a very common dive site up to people, and for laying the groundwork for some really exciting developments in the future. I think we can thank the people that have gone before us in photogrammetry in terms of the courses that ran in 2016, 2017. I think we can thank UIS for their support here, Max and his amazing GPS locating system, Marcus and Simon, fill in anyone else.
Tapser for the survey work.
Tapser for the survey.
Brett Thorpe for his ongoing support, always appreciated. Tony Norton for turning up and diving. Claire Fitzsimmons for not getting lost with the tablet.
Does help.
Yeah, always helps. Yeah.
So,
and let's not forget, let's thank our other halves as well for putting up with this.
Well,
yeah.
Can't believe I said that.
Yeah.
So we're all good, and yeah. So thank you. Have a very, very fine new year. Let's keep this nailed on the idea that divers can set off with a hobby objective and suddenly develop a hugely exciting project from that standpoint. I think that speaks to the essence of diving and really where we can go in the future with this. So thank you all very much. Please feel free to pipe up with any questions, but otherwise I think we'll sort of retreat back to the safety of our libations, and we'll see you all in the new year and wish you a very happy 2021 season's diving.
Yeah, thank you much, everybody. It's been a pleasure sharing it, and hopefully everyone enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you all.
Cool.
Thank you guys from Finland.